Nose to, there we go. We're recording this so that we can watch it later as well. Hi to everybody. I would love it if you would pop into the chat in the next 5 minutes and just tell me, where you're zooming in from. I am in a very cool co-working facility right next to the San Juan Capistrano Costco. And now that I found out that this place is available, I might relocate. This is super cool. I'm Pamela Bursler, and Brent Zahn is with me today. Say hi, Brent.
Hello, everyone. I recognize a couple of names already. I am in a workshop at a horse ranch, but in
Right?
Temecula, California.
It's the middle of the day.
Yeah.
It was this. I had a last minute request to come down to the Costco to look at it with a potential site manager. And I'm like, how am I going to do the webinar and get down there? And sure enough, it all works. Hey, Rebecca, thank you for telling us you're in Walnut Creek. That's awesome. Anybody else want to tell us where they're zooming in from? We have like 4 minutes before we get started. And I'm so excited that I'm in San Juan Capistrano that I'm actually going to write it here. Oh, right. Connor in Colorado in Centennial. That's awesome. Hey, Austin, snowy day in Denver, huh? That's cool. I like that. It's like 68 degrees here. So sorry. Heidi in the city of Gilroy. Welcome. Thanks for joining. Jessica, also from the city of Gilroy. Great to see you all. Thank you all for joining. I'm very excited about this. As I mentioned, if you just popped in, you might not have heard me. I had to come down to our Costco site, which you're going to see some pictures of in just a few minutes. And it was, I didn't know how I was going to do the webinar, but Anna figured it out for me and got me into a beautiful co-working space. And I'm thinking about relocating. It's so nice down here. And the landscape looks fantastic at Costco, I have to say. I can't wait for it to warm up in Colorado. So we have the same excitement going on there. So in 3 minutes, we will get started. I have everything open. We are going to do Q&A through the Q&A, but I think we can leave the chat open. So if you can't figure out the Q&A or it's easier on your phone or whatever to just go into chat, you can ask your questions there. Brent Zahn from Flower to the People is, and also Logical Landscaping is with us today, and he is going to be answering your questions in real time. So you can ask questions throughout the talk. That's how we can get through 45 minutes, and be efficient about it. Just trying to figure here. There's Justin Black from the city of Roseville. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Very much appreciate your telling us where you are. Like, we have a really nice distribution. It's cool. Some California, some Colorado. I suspect that there may be a Utah or two on here. So we will see. And we will get started in 1 minute, uncharacteristically on time for me. I usually wait 1 minute for people to join, but I really want to be able to answer questions. So we're gonna, and keep it to the lunch hour. Kind of an exciting thing. So you're in the right place if you want to learn more about the Take Back the Turf strategy, which is what we're going to be discussing today. A little update on where things are. Although it sounds like our Colorado site is probably in some cold weather right now. It's pretty close to Denver, and you got the weather report there from Denver that there's snow happening today. No snow in San Juan Capistrano.
Yeah, not here in Temecula either.
No, not today anyway.
No.
All right.
My brother told me it's 8 o'clock.
Okay, listen, I'm going to get started. And I'm on a touch screen, so bear with me here. This is all just being worked out. Here we go. Pretty exciting. Okay, well, thank you all for joining us for this, our first, really, Lunch and Learn. And I love this format. I've always been a huge fan, and so I'm really excited that you all could join us today to learn more about the Take Back the Turf strategy and get a little update on where things are with our two sites. So I'm going to actually introduce you to our new deck here, which we do finally have available for people. We will be glad to send it to you after the webinar. You can request it and we'll post it. We'll send you a link to it and you can share it with people because it's a pretty good read. So just to remind everybody what this is all about is the Take Back the Turf strategy is a strategy. So there's not any really one way of doing things. We are running a pilot project over the next 2 years where we are going to use seed essentially to transform non-functional turf into a much more regenerative landscape, something that we call a polyculture landscape or polyculture lawn. It's very low cost. It is absolutely part of the watershed approach and super eco-friendly. It hits all the marks. And just to refresh your memory, there are a couple things that sort of differentiate this strategy from a traditional removal of turf grass and replacement with garden. This particular strategy keeps grass in place. So that's what makes it so cost effective. We are essentially doing an overseeding. It's really no different than if you were just overseeding a lawn. You were updating a lawn and then overseeding it. You don't need any special equipment really to do it. It's the traditional turf management equipment, and minimal training is required. We have a webinar that we are developing, almost ready, that our partners and the installers and maintenance crews can take, become familiar with the technique, but it's not something that requires extensive training. It is a prescriptive irrigation program, so we are optimizing our water management by essentially setting a water budget and then meeting that water budget, not exceeding it, hopefully, although we'll talk about that in a second. It's all about keeping organics on site. No organics leave the site, so we're not taking out the grass. The grass stays in place. And we actually recycle any of the thatch and so forth back on the land. We're maximizing animal impact. And what that means is we're designing for biodiversity. We're designing for birds and mammals and insects and all that stuff, and also for people, which is super important. We want to get people back into landscapes and enjoying them so that they will, manage them and preserve them and really get back to nature in a way. And finally, the program features a special, highly diverse seed blend that we have developed just for the pilot. So we can talk a little bit more about that in a bit, but the seed mix is, we have a 2024 seed mix, we have a new seed mix for 25, and it is highly biodiverse. In fact, there are more than 60 species of plants in the mix. Our 24 mix had about 60 species. Our 25 mix has closer to 100. And if any of you have been kind of following along with sort of the research about this whole polyculture and biodiversity landscaping, you will remember that the number of families that are represented by the plants in the mix is a really important thing for soil health. And in our 24 mix, we had more than 15 families. And in our 25 mix, we're looking at closer to 25 families. So we're really maximizing biodiversity all the way from the tiniest microbe up into the skies. And part of the strategy is really helping people to shift their perspective on what is considered a weed. We don't use any herbicides or pesticides on these sites, and we're utilizing the seed mix to basically rebuild soil, support pollinators, and create a landscape that becomes more complex over time. And that complexity is reflected in the plants that actually express themselves. So in the beginning, we're going to see a lot of plants that are 4B or, are kind of weedy, a lot of clovers and very kind of simple plants. But because the mix is so diverse, seeds are lying in wait. And in fact, the native seed bank is lying in wait. As the mix of seeds start to build the soil, those native seeds and other flowering and so forth, more complex seeds, plants will actually express themselves. And it's important to kind of remember that plants express themselves when the soil is correct. So that's really what we're doing is we're healing the soil so that we can get a really beautiful and complex ecosystem, more like a grassland. And did you know, fun fact, that every seed has about 9 billion microbes in it? So if we really want to create a vast soil biome, seeds are the way to go. Now, another thing that's really different about what we are doing is we are specifically designing in order to bring as many animals onto the site as possible. And we don't limit ourselves to what is typically thought of in terms of biodiversity, the insects and reptiles and birds and mammals, but we have expanded animals to include humans and our domesticated pets. We want to have people back on the land. And this is a really important part of our strategy. We are out to heal plant blindness in the communities and get people more engaged with their landscape. And actually, it's important to remember that people are part of the vast ecosystem, and so it's a really important thing for us to make sure that they are involved. The other thing is that the soil microbiome actually benefits the more animals of all kinds that are impacting it, shedding their cells on the site, the better the soil microbiome is able to respond and the healthier is the system. So what the heck does a polyculture lawn look like anyway? Well, it could look like anything because your site is going to determine what it ultimately looks like. It could be a lot of low growing plants. They're all in the seed mix. And the conditions on your site are going to have them express themselves. It could end up, depending on how it's managed, whether it's mowed or not, it could end up being something as simple as a clover lawn. This is what we call kind of our worst case scenario is if the site is being mowed regularly, it is possible that it could become much more clover dominant. And so this is kind of what we consider our least biodiverse outcome. Or it could be super complex, like this yarrow lawn. And so it's really dependent on, what the site is going to give us as to what the plants are going to be. And as I mentioned before, we're really trying to put the fun back into functional turf so that we have as much biodiversity as possible. One of the things that we are measuring in our program is community acceptance. And so we develop mowing plans for these sites. The mowing plan, a big piece of the mowing plan is to make sure that we have cues to care. And those are essentially places that are mowed and juxtaposed with the more untamed landscape. This is a cue to the neighborhood that what's happening in the untamed area is totally intentional. It's not just a bunch of weeds, it's not just overgrown grass. This is meant to be something different. And we use pathways and the mowed edges to also encourage people to come into the landscape. So we're very interested in having more commercial, institutional, industrial, municipal sites join our 2-year transformation pilot project. And we wanted to talk a little bit about the 2 sites that were in our, I call it phase 1, but the first round of this project in 2024, seeded in 2024. We wanted to talk about these 2 sites because they are actually very, very different. And but it's the same seed mix and the same practices that were used on each site. So I'm going to start with the Arapahoe County site, Arapahoe County Administration Building in Littleton, Colorado. This is about a 3-acre site, a little bit over 3 acres. It was seeded in September 2024, and you can see in the lower left-hand corner, there's Brent, who's answering questions if you're asking them. He is walking on the site before. And then the main picture is a 3-week post-germination visual, and you can see a lot of seed has actually started to germinate here. Now, I'm using this site because we have excellent pictures here to show you exactly how this all works. And as I mentioned before, the installation process is very straightforward from a turf management point of view. So if you know how to manage turf properly, you know how to do this. The site is scalped and dethatched. Then it is core aerated. And then the seed is broadcast. If the site is very large, it could potentially be hydroseeded. But in this particular case, being 3 acres, it was broadcast seeding, and it happened, in the span of a couple of hours. When you do the dethatching, all of those organics are actually stockpiled on site. And then after the seed goes down, the stockpiled organics are mixed with a 1/4 inch of compost, and that is redistributed over the site to be a little bit of a cover over the seeds. That's it. And then it's irrigated for germination. And as we can see here, within just a few weeks, we have germination. And again, the fall seeding is, maybe not the best time to be seeding, but both of these sites were seeded in the fall. That's it for installation. Okay. We also have a site in San Juan Capistrano at a Costco wholesale. And you can see here the inset shows the before picture. It's all a warm season grass. I think it's worth mentioning that the site in Colorado was a cool season grass. But here it's a warm season grass. And this is the site before. It too was scalped, dethatched, core aerated, broadcast seed, and compost cover. And what you see here in the inset is the cover crop, or the seeds, after 16 weeks. This site is kind of interesting because we have a lot of challenges at this site with regard to management and with regard to the landscape management itself, and also the management of the property at large. In general, we want to have one point of contact at a site. We want to make sure they have authority at that site. And we want to make sure that we have a dialogue with the installers and maintenance crew so that we can be getting data about mowing, about irrigation, etc., which helps us to make decisions and help them to make good decisions. At this site, we don't really have any of that. There's been a lot of turnover, both at the management at the Costco and also with the landscape contractor. So it's always a big surprise when we go down to the site to see what we're going to encounter. The pictures that you're seeing here are from our first community event that we put on here at the Costco site. Every one of the sites in our study is going to hold up to 4 events, human interaction events, in the course of each year. So over the course of 2 years, that's 8 community events. And this was the first one, which we call Stomp and Romp. I'll show you a couple more pictures in a bit. But we basically demonstrated some of the monitoring that we're doing on the site. We did a little plant ID on the site to see what was growing. And then we actually impacted the site by running around it, acting like animals. I'll answer more questions on that in a second. But this site is definitely coming along. Now, it looks great from the ground where we just saw those pictures. But when you go up in a drone and you take a look at it, you really begin to see what some of the issues are. So we do have quite a few irrigation issues at this site. I forgot to say kind of at the beginning that one of the things that needs to happen on these sites is that the irrigation needs to be tuned up so that we can get germination and we can actually prescriptively manage the irrigation over the time of the study. And in this particular case, there are 7 valve zones on this site, and 5 of them are not working. So while the site was hand watered, in other words, they turned on the valves manually during germination. And so we did actually have a pretty uniform germination at this site. Within just a few weeks after having that good germination, the hand watering stopped. And since 5 of the zones were not wired properly to the irrigation controller, they simply stopped irrigating. We also have a couple of issues here where the irrigation is blocked by light poles or some other thing. And so you can see here with the circles in the lower portion, sort of big area there, that's a whole zone that's just flat out not working. But then as you come up to the trees and you start to see some of these circles around the trees, those are areas that are blocked by the light poles. And so the irrigation around the trees isn't happening. So this picture was taken before we got our winter rains. It really didn't rain here significantly from the time of seeding to just last week. So and this picture is taken at the end of January. So this was all irrigated production or growth here. And yeah, you can see that this was definitely an issue. The other issue that we had here was the site was mowed we recommend that the entire site be mowed after 3 or 4 weeks of past germination when the plant material gets to an average height of 8 inches. The whole site gets mowed once in order to encourage all the little seeds underneath that are blocked to have light, and also because it's possible that after this initial disturbance, you may get a flush from the weed bank. So because those seeds are lying dormant and all of a sudden they're getting a little compost and they're just like, hey, and they come right up. We are using that first mow, prescriptive mow, to knock down the weeds and also give an opportunity for those smaller seeds to get some sunlight and germinate. And so that mowing was supposed to happen here at the end of October. And we came to the site and found that it had been mowed down to a 1/2 inch height when it had been prescribed to be mowed to 4 inches high. So this is, for all intents and purposes, this is really a second germination, if you will, happening on this site. And I think that's the reason why we really see absolutely nothing in these zones that weren't getting irrigation on the schedule. But that said, the areas that have the ground cover that are receiving the irrigation are flourishing. And we have seen an incredible jump in the number of birds and wildlife that we're seeing on the site. Certainly insects are, it's everything that you would expect from a pollinator mix of plants. But we're also seeing a lot of birds coming in and even things that you just wouldn't see in a typical Costco parking lot, which is essentially where this is. Now, the little guy up there in the left-hand upper left corner is a gopher living in this living in the Costco site, living his best life. And we do think that that might have been something that impacted the irrigation. So our recommendation is to put in an owl box. And so we'll see what happens with that over time. This is a little picture from the Stomp and Romp. We had almost 50 people out on the site, walking around, doing a animal impact. So these people were acting as though they were sheep or goats or cattle, and making small divots in the ground, doing small disturbances and knocking over plants, allowing them to have contact with the soil, just general disturbances, and also shedding all of their hair and skin cells. It was a really fun event, and we subsequently got rain, and many of these areas have started to fill in already. In Arapahoe, we also had some irrigation issues, which have kind of gone to sleep for a little while, because in this particular context, the irrigation has been winterized. So the irrigation was winterized at the end of October, and it's not going to be renewed for spring until the end of April. So during this period of time, we get to really kind of observe what's happening on the site. We did get a pretty good germination at the site, and a lot of diversity coming up. But now we get to look at, well, where does the irrigation maybe need a little bit more tweaking? And you can see very clearly here that we have a distribution uniformity issue, in the lower right-hand side. This is definitely needs to be addressed. And then also on the hillside around the trees. I want to also draw your attention to the upper middle of the screen, kind of more on the left, closer to the road. It's very shiny area. That's a pretty wet area. Both of these sites are stormwater sites, and this is the low spot for this entire 3 acres. And you can see that it is actually holding quite a bit of water. There's a bunch of compaction there. So when we start to come out of winterization, we are definitely going to have to address that compaction area, perhaps even do another seeding in that area. And we may even want to do a little bit more seeding in this area where the distribution uniformity wasn't that great, and is going to be repaired. Arapahoe does have animal impact, even though they haven't yet had their community event. The animal impact that's happening there is, of course, neighborhood community members with their domesticated animals, but the site was actually roped off to the community for a couple of months. And so this picture is from the end of November, and you can see that there's quite a Canadian infestation going on here. A little bit of reverse immigration. These guys have really kind of taken over. And so, and we are happy for it to have that animal impact, right? They're making deposits, they're eating things, they're walking around. It's all good stuff, but maybe a little bit too much of it at one time. So removing the ropes is the answer, so that we can get people back from the community with their dogs and so forth, and move this block around so it's not just sitting there. We do have a human impact event scheduled for the 14th of May, and it's going to be a seed distribution event. And we're very much looking forward to that in Colorado. So more to come in the second update. We'll show you that. Now, I want to talk very quickly about the soil testing and monitoring that we have been doing on these sites. All of the sites have multiple kinds of testing and reporting. But the soil testing is really kind of at the heart of what we're doing, because it is the thing that is going to help us to refine the seed mix, refine the techniques. Without soil health, we don't have a beautiful landscape, so we're focused on soil health. And some of the testing that we've done as baseline is we do a compaction test to see what our infiltration is like, to see what our soil density is like. And then we also pull samples to do some lab testing. And I'm going to show you a little bit about just very early analysis of where we are with that. We do testing before the site is disturbed with the core aeration. And then we do another round of testing after 1 year, and then the final testing at the end of 2 years. And this is all part of the pilot program. And then we have some ongoing monitoring that we want to be doing to assess soil health. We can look at the aggregation of the soil. We can actually look at the photosynthetic activity of the plants, and we can determine from that whether or not there's nutrient cycling happening in the soil. So there are things that are very easy to do along the way and on a semi-regular basis in between these three lab analysis samples. And all of our testing and monitoring is being done by Dwelling on Carbon, a 501c3 located here in California, who is absolutely determined to come up with cost-effective, accessible alternatives to monoculture lawn. And we're really grateful that they're helping us with this testing. So this is something interesting, and it's by no means, completely the most conclusive thing. We're still trying to figure out exactly what it all means, and we need more sites in order to really get really good information here. But I thought I would share with you some of the data that we have begun collecting from the project so far. So the two sites that I just talked about, the two commercial sites, are at the top. We have an open space site in California, in the San Diego area, as a baseline. And then we are also conducting some residential tests. Dwelling on Carbon is actually installing residential sites. They have about an acre's worth of residential sites installed so far in the San Diego area. And so that data is also added in here just so you can kind of compare what's going on. And I want to draw your attention to organic carbon and water holding capacity, because these are two of our most important things for us to look at. The other stuff is going to be more important over time. But organic carbon is very interesting because this is essentially telling us, so this is not soil organic matter. This is about, and if you will do a quick calculation in your head, if you have a soil organic matter test, the percent of organic carbon is about half of that. And we've been doing a lot of other soil testing on other sites for other reasons, and that has borne out. So you can just think in your head that this is what you see here for organic carbon is approximately half of what your soil organic matter is going to be. And Arapahoe is actually quite high for a commercial site. We're not really sure why, except that perhaps it's silt coming down on the site. Perhaps at some point it had been fertilized with an organic type of fertilizer that is decomposing. So we're not entirely sure why the organic carbon is so high, but it's pretty good. It's in a good place, and certainly in comparison with the Costco site, which has much lower organic carbon. And in general, we would expect that the organic carbon would tell us about how well our germination is going to be. So we expect better germination the higher the organic carbon number. And again, we only have two sites, but and the Arapahoe site only had a month's worth of growth before it went into not being irrigated and going into dormancy because of the weather. So we're going to be really watching this very, very closely in the spring as we come onto the warmer season in Arapahoe. We're going to be very interested in seeing, did the seed bank that was there that didn't germinate the first time, and maybe even things that did, are they going to be able to come up again and do as well really as the Costco site, or maybe even better? So that's one thing. And then the water holding capacity. So there's a relationship between soil organic carbon and water holding capacity. when we see higher organic carbon, we see higher water holding capacity. So of course, water holding capacity is super important to us because that is what that's our water reservoir to get us through a really dry time and to also allow us to go 1 month, 1 week or longer in between irrigation events. So a lot of what we are going to be tracking is and looking for is a boost, not just in organic carbon, because the plants will be pumping organic carbon into the ground, but also this rise in the water holding capacity. So stay tuned. But there's other monitoring that we're doing. So we are looking at the plant and ecosystem diversity. We are doing plant ID counts. It's one of them you can see going on right here, where we set up a 3-foot square and count the plants and insects and other things that we're seeing within that square. We are also doing a community acceptance assessments where through surveys and QR codes that are on our signage, we're gathering information about what people think about the site. And then we're also gathering cost data. So when you agree to be part of this study, you're agreeing to share with us the cost of the installation, the cost of the management that you're doing, and any monitoring that you might want to take on. We want to know it all, warts and all. The whole purpose here is to figure out, does this actually work and can we do it cost effectively? So we need to know. And I mentioned a little earlier in this talk about the water use data, that this is actually a really important part of our program. We are trying to reduce the water use on the site, and to be totally honest, the Costco site is a challenge for us because not only is it underwatered where the irrigation is not working, but it's also overwatered because in the places where the irrigation is working, the schedule has not been turned back to once a week or no times a week, and it's not on a smart controller. So we know that we're overwatering in parts of the Costco site. And that was borne out when we were there for the Stomp and Romp. There were actually wet spots. So this is something that we're really homing in on for the 2025 cohort of sites. We really want to be able to dial in the irrigation management. It's the most important thing for us to be looking at. And so we need your help to do that. The site managers, and then also the water agencies and other community agencies that are involved with the program, we need your help to really be able to monitor this. We know that already there has been a cost savings, despite the fact that there's a little overwatering happening in our Costco site. We already know that the costly overseeding, the infrequent mowing, the elimination of all of the fertilizers and other things that go on these sites, that this is reducing the cost of the maintenance going forward. So we're very excited about tracking that going forward. Now, I'm going to really go through this because I want to answer questions live. I want to iterate that as a pilot partner, if you decide that you have a site or that you can, or you yourself manage a site, or that you know of a site that should be in this study, you are actually going to get the technical assistance that we provide, which is essentially on-site technical assistance during the site prep and the seeding. We do ongoing support through remote check-ins through Zoom. We have educational signage templates, and we've got a web page for each of these sites. We have community engagement plans. So we're developing these. You saw the Stomp and Romp, the seed spreading is coming up in May. We have other community events that we're developing, and we provide you with a lot of support to get those off the ground. And we are working to create case studies out of these sites. So here's an example of some of the materials that we've developed. We have these lawn signs available that can be customized with your logos and information. and a QR code that takes you to either a page that you have or to the web page that we build. And we send you these, excuse me, these PDFs to print out. And we have actually a national printer for them as well. So they're very, very easy to, and we're developing more as we go, because each site's going to have its own needs. We have a site evaluation form with all the seeds in it to be able to look at the plants at various stages, germination, and then after they start to flower. And then, as I mentioned, these community event pages that really tell you everything you need to know to put on the event. We have the information about the pilot study on our website, but I will reiterate that we are looking for sites that are between 1 acre and 5 acres. Although we've been approached about some larger ones, so we can talk about that, but 30,000 square feet is kind of the minimum size. And it doesn't matter whether it's in sun or shade or if it has trees, none of that matters, but it has to have a working irrigation system that we can upgrade. That's an important part, overhead irrigation. Or if you're in a water-rich environment, it doesn't need to have irrigation, but that's, if you're not in a water-rich environment, it needs to have overhead irrigation. We need to have access to all the water use data and the other data that I mentioned previously. The maintenance crew and the team that's going to be managing all this from the site need to take our 90-minute online class so that they know what's going on. We provide that class for free as part of the project. You buy the seed mix and do the installation. So your contractor is going to do the installation and also the maintenance. We provide the consult. Actually, I think I might even have a slide. So I'm going to go to the next thing. Oh, public access. So the public access doesn't need to be all the time, but we need to have public access during the community events. So you are agreeing to doing community events with us. Oh, I didn't, I guess I took it out. Sorry. So we send you the seed mix, and we do the consulting, we do the testing, we analyze the data that you gather for us in the other categories. We help you to work with your community partners. We provide support through Zoom meetings and occasional on-site meetings. And we help you put on your events, and we will definitely show up for the first event. So it's quite a lot of hand-holding, but it is a commitment. We're looking for good partners who really want to figure this out with us. So with all that said, you can absolutely reach us at flowertothepeople.com, or you can email us at annae@greengardensgroup.com. This deck, and actually a little bit truncated, like doesn't need to have all the information in it. So we can send you these slides. You can edit them as you want, print them out, give them, share them with potential site customers, etc. So Brent, maybe you want to come on, and I saw a couple questions here and there. Were there a couple questions?
Yeah, we had a couple. The last one was, can the site have recycled water? And
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we're going to be drinking that water soon. Yeah. So the Costco site actually has recycled water. So that's all part of it. And I think at some point we may do some water testing to add to it, to all of this. But right now we're not doing water testing. You know, that might be something that you are interested in, or adding to the mix of monitoring.
Had another question regarding the tools that are used for scalping and dethatching at that kind of size. So commercially available tools, they might not be the ones that your residential crews carry with them, but if you're doing large scale turf management, this is probably already something the crew's familiar with.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, when we did our residential very first pilot 4 years ago, we used the residential materials, and it's fine, but it's not for an acre
No, not for an acre.
or 30,000 square feet or whatever.
That 22-inch wide mower deck and dethatcher is going to take
No, it doesn't.
a while.
But yes, but it is ubiquitous in turf world. So, anything else? Looks like maybe one more.
One more that I previously answered that I think could spark a little discussion, and then there's one that just came in. But the original question was, are there any fire-related concerns? So my answer is that green irrigated herbaceous lawn would typically be considered a green belt versus maybe like a native garden where people are having concerns. And then we went a little bit further as to how to talk about kind of more old school, in this case, park leaders who also perhaps have concerns around fence lines and residential properties. So I thought it was a good way to talk about the cues to care and the mowing that, we encourage the perimeter of these landscapes to be mowed and to be maintained so that, there is no, it's just an overgrown fence line or an overgrown sidewalk. That is what the cue to care is. It's a cue to your brain to see that someone is caring for that landscape.
And the mowing plan is part of what we help you develop at the initiation of the project. So we have a conversation about what your objectives are, what your concerns are, and we have some guidance on mowing, but then we actually come up with a monthly plan. And it's only mowed once a month, and it doesn't all have to be mowed at one time. So just the edges can be mowed so that you have those cues to care or pathways. It really is very site specific, as all landscapes are. And, we work with you to figure out what the best approach would be for that. Yeah. 4 inches though, 4 inches, not half an inch, please. Anything else?
Yeah, Cheryl, could you clarify the first statement? So it says relative to the size of the property, wouldn't a site that is more in line with the size of a residential site, this would be a CII site? I'm just not sure exactly.
I think, the issue is that for the study, and for all of the consulting and analysis and investment really that we're making to have a nationwide study, the site has to be big enough for us to kind of justify that move on to doing all this. So that's why we have taken some of the seed mix and devoted it to residential properties and residential size properties, 1,000 square feet and so forth. We're doing direct installs in LA with 1,000 square feet, but they're not our focus here. Our focus is on these larger properties so that we can really see the difference of what the different parts of the property yield. Different aspects of the property are going to have, different results. And that is something that we can then take to residential sites. Yeah. So one thing I did want to say about very quickly about the fire issue is that's also a mowing thing. So in sites where there might be an issue it's an irrigated green belt, but in a place where there might be an issue about having standing seed heads, in the fall or, whatever. There are lots of different concerns at different sites. The whole thing can be weed whacked. It can be weed whacked and it can be mowed down. So that's the beauty of this. It is actually like a lawn. It's like a grassland. All right, well, we're coming up to the end. If there's maybe one more question, we can answer it quickly, but I want to respect everyone's lunchtime.
Last question is, Linda is curious why to measure organic carbon rather than soil organic matter.
Because the organic carbon is actually what's cycling in the system. The organic matter may not be cycling. So that's really why we're interested in the organic carbon. That's basically it. But soil organic matter is a good proxy, right? That's telling you you take half of that is cycling.
Yeah, the carbon's typically more stable too, so it's actually a better measurement.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for your time today. This is the first time, so we will have continuous improvement on this. If you have any further questions, please send them to us at annae@greengardensgroup.com. You can reach me at pamela@flowertothepeople.com. And you can, through our website, we have other email, and click to ask questions. Come on down to flowertothepeople.com, and thank you again for your time and consideration, and we're happy to send you the deck. And thank you very much, Brent, for answering questions in the background. Take care. I hope to see you all soon. Bye.